lot of familiar faces, but then I see a lot of new faces, and it's always wonderful to see new faces. Chris Shadler. Her interest in wild canids began back in the 1980s in Indiana when she was volunteering at a wolf park. And this got her interested so much so that she went on and got her master's in conservation biology. And since the early 90s, she's taught at UNH. She has taught conservation classes about conservation issues and wolf ecology. But after she moved to New England, did you buy the farm? I want to say the correct. She bought a farm to raise sheep and to also her train her border collies. And it was this experience that she started encountering coyotes. And this evening, she's going to fill us in on that experience and what she achieved from coexisting with coyotes. And she's also going to tell you that coyotes rock. Welcome to our library, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so much. Okay, well, thank you for asking me here. Could the lights come down just a little bit? The ones in the front.
Okay.
Perfect. Perfect. So I'm glad to be here. I got here a little bit early and drove around town just to see what Groveland's like, and it's so beautiful. I love the common area and the old houses, really beautiful. I live northwest of Concord, New Hampshire, and in a very, very rural area, and so it's really actually nice and refreshing to be. And I live right on the Blackwater River, and our little Blackwater River is a tributary to the Merrimack. So, you know, to see the Merrimack in its mightiness down here, gosh, what a big one. I did teach at UNH for most of my teaching career. I also have taught for 10 years at the high school level, and that was a treat, actually. And then recently I've been teaching third graders. And that makes me feel like I really missed the glory of teaching, because those kids just, their minds are as open as the sky. And then they come up afterwards and they hug you, which is just, you know, I don't know if it would have been appropriate during college, but, you know. Anyway, quite a while ago, I became a representative for a group called Project Coyote, which is a national organization that's founded in California. And what we promote is coexistence with coyotes. The reason we promote coexistence is because there's really no other choice. For the last at least 150 years, we have been trying to literally eliminate the coyote from the landscape. The animal is the most persecuted carnivore in North America, and they have been shooting it, trapping it, poisoning it, blowing up dens, doing everything conceivable to drive the numbers of coyotes down. And all that's happened is those numbers have increased. And so we know now, because coyotes use something called responsive reproduction, that when its environment changes, and especially when its numbers are reduced, they respond by producing larger litters, and they respond also by younger animals breeding. Under normal circumstances where coyotes are not hunted, which is Yellowstone National Park, any of the national parks, their populations are actually smaller, more stable, less subject to the ups and downs. So we promote coexistence. And if any of you would like to have any more information about coyotes, if you want to, you can sign up for receiving the Project Coyote email newsletter that comes out 4 times a year. And it's, they don't hassle you or anything, so it's pretty cool. The coyote, and I say coyote and coyote, so don't ask me which is the right one, I don't know. I think out west they use the term coyote a little bit more, and out here it's coyote. The coyotes that we live with here in the Northeast are animals that are not native to the Northeast. Up until 1940 or so, we didn't have coyotes here. The home of a coyote in the United States is really just west of the Mississippi River. I'll show you a map in a few minutes. And it was because of the way that we disturbed the landscape and the way that we eliminated competing predators, that by 1900 there were virtually no competing predators left here. And I'll show you that too in a little bit. And so, you know, into this basically vacant ecosystem with no top predator comes this little wily coyote. But the animal that arrived here is not the wily coyote that most of us grew up watching fail, right? This is one of the most successful carnivores in the world in terms of its resilience. So what I'm going to focus on tonight is the fact that coyotes are a self-regulating predator, that if left to their own devices, their populations stabilize. So the message is, the harder you hunt them, the faster they reproduce. So if we want more and more and more coyotes, what do? Hunt them like crazy. And if we want fewer of them, what do? Okay, that's a hard sell. And for 30 years, I have been saying this stuff, and I haven't really gotten very far in New Hampshire. You all in Massachusetts, of course, are more progressive than we are in New Hampshire. And you're nodding, you know all of that, don't you? And so you actually have a season on this animal. So that's light years ahead of where we are in New Hampshire. How do coyotes self-regulate? I'm going to be talking about that. These are some of the things that we know that coyotes do. And so as a top predator in the ecosystem, and as a very large coyote, right? So let's back up a minute. Wile E. coyote that lives out west is a 25 to 30 pound animal. Very long-legged, not territorial. They don't have a pack structure out there. They sort of think differently than the coyotes out here. And the coyotes out west are largely pure coyote, except that even the coyotes out west have a little tiny dab of wolf in them. A little tiny dab. And geneticists are able to trace back through maternal bloodlines, mitochondrial DNA, how wolf genes and coyote genes have been swapped. And so we know now that even wolves have some coyote, and coyote have some wolf genes in them. So the animal that we have, instead of being 25 to 30 pounds, is 35 up to 62 pounds. So the biggest coyote documented, as far as I know right now, was a 62 pound animal. And this animal, which looks like it probably weighs 110 pounds, may be a 50 pound animal. So, and something's happening with this screen, that it's kind of extending everything lengthwise. So all these animals kind of look part dachshund. Actually, not at all. Right? So the eastern coyote is anywhere from 0 to 10% dog, 8 to 30% wolf, and 60 to 70% coyote. How did this happen? How did this happen? Well, as you'll see in a few minutes, when the vacancy opened up here in the east for a top predator, it's sort of, think of it as a sink. Think of it as a pole. So when there's a vacancy in the ecosystem, that vacancy is like a yawning hole in the ecosystem that pulls things into it. And what got pulled in 1900 was the western coyote east. And when that western coyote came east, we know that it interbred with the eastern wolf, which lives right up north of us in Ontario. All of these figures are averages, so averages hide the extremes. And so some animals that you'll see, like the picture that you showed me of that little coyote, that was probably maybe a 30 to 35 pound animal. It looked very slight to me. It also looked very, very coyote to me, with very little wolf in it. And every now and again, I see those kinds of animals up in New Hampshire. The further north I get in New Hampshire, the closer to Canada I get, the more animals look a little bit more wolfy. So what's happening in the Northeast is something called a hybrid swarm. All of the wild dogs in the Northeast, from the gray wolf to the eastern wolf to the Great Lakes gray wolf to the eastern coyote, they are all interbreeding. And when where's Don? Don, where are you? Yeah. So in biology, you taught your students the definition of species. And we all learned this, whether you remember it or not. So species, the members of one species interbreed only with one another in order to keep the species pure. But what we know now is that over vast periods of time, these guys have been interbreeding. And we're only now discovering it because the genetics work has become so much more refined. Why would species breed with one another? What would be the advantage of that?
Opportunity.
What's that?
Opportunity.
Opportunity. Said like a true guy. It is. It's, you know, I mean, if it's there and the time is right, you know, and the light, you know, moonlight is at that certain angle. Yeah. So yes, opportunity.
It improves genetics.
How would it improve genetics?
It knocks down some of those traits that you know would hinder an animal.
So with a broader genetic base, that animal would have more options for coping with the changing environment. Is the environment changing out there? Yes, indeed. Right. So this is a very interesting phenomenon that we're seeing. So the picture on the right is an old picture of an animal that I knew at the Stone Zoo, just north of Boston. He was one of 5 or 6 siblings. He looks pretty big, but he weighed 40 pounds. And so he's an example of an eastern coyote. This is the eastern wolf that lives in Algonquin Provincial Park. And this is the animal, well, not this animal, but this is the wolf with which migrating western coyotes interbred. And this wolf, of course, has gray wolf in it, red wolf in it, and of course you can see that it also has coyote in it. And I'm sure that if you have seen coyotes, you've seen coyotes that look like this eastern wolf. And you've seen wolves that look like this eastern coyote. So, not around here though, right? We don't have wolves around here. So our eastern coyote benefits from its inheritance of coyote and wolf traits. So all coyotes are super adaptable, responsive reproducers that allow them to shift easily according to change. With the wolf traits that it has inherited, that has given our coyote this large size. We've got the biggest coyotes in the entire world right here in the Northeast, which really sounds like a little bit more than it is. The only place on earth coyotes are found is America. And so our animal has inherited not only changes to its physical being, but also behavioral changes. Life in a pack is a fundamentally different thing than life out there solo. right? So, and because coyotes live in social units, they can hunt in the winter in social units, hunt deer. And the last thing too, which is very important, the jaw muscles and the occipital attachment in our eastern coyotes is notably larger than that in the western coyote. So what is a territory? What does a territory have in it? Well, what is a territory? Where they live, where something lives. If something is territorial, if an animal is territorial, and predators usually are, it's where they live. What does a territory have that is critical to the...
Water.
What's that?
Food and water.
Water, good. Good, cover and den sites, that's it. So truly understanding what a territory is, enables us to understand that in fact, if one pack of coyotes occupies a territory, and that's the case, one pack per territory, the amount of food in that territory will determine the size of the pack. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
A pack is a male and female that bred, mated, they mate for life, and their offspring. So mom and dad and their offspring. The normal size of a litter is 4 to 6 pups. 4 to 6 pups, and half to 75% of those pups won't make it to their first birthday. A lot of stuff gets them, right? So, so the only time that the den is used, that's a den, one of the handful of dens that I've found in my life. The only time they use the den is to give birth to their young, and while mom is breastfeeding. And after the pups are weaned, all the pups are removed from the den, and the whole bunch of them go to a different part of their territory, and where it's safe, a safe place for the pups to grow up. So coyotes are not den animals. The only time the den is used is to give birth to their young. And so this is actually a den that I found up in New Hampshire. The inset shows that what this thing is a pile of dirt, and then I climbed up there and saw that, it's just a beautiful sort of classic coyote den, and I have my backpack there for scale. It's always important to have scale.
Now, would other coyotes go and use that same den later on? To
that,
give birth,
so good question. Will other coyotes use that den to give birth? Only mom and dad breed. Period, end of story. None of as their offspring becomes 1 or 2 years of age, the offspring leave the territory, go in search of a mate. Usually they're not successful and they die before they find one. But they have to do that because only mom and dad are allowed to breed. Does this sound at all familiar to you? And the enforcer is mom. She is the enforcer. So the answer to your question is no. As long as that pack maintains that territory, holds on to that territory, then only mom is gonna use that. If somebody comes in and shoots all the coyotes in the territory, pretty soon another pack will move in, and they may use that den. People wonder about the relationship between coyotes and fox, red fox. Do you see red fox around much?
Yes.
Yeah. And so red fox used to not be around quite so much, but with the coming of the coyote, the pecking order out there is, coyotes, if they come across a red fox, will attempt to eliminate that red fox. And the reason for that is that both coyote and red fox, they both eat mice and voles and bugs. And, they basically, but fox, of course, can't take deer. And fox don't live in packs. Fox don't have that wolfiness about them. So they're different species, different genus even. Eurocyan, not a canis at all. So as the coyote population has grown, it has forced the red foxes to establish teeny tiny areas in which they breed and whelp their young in between the territories of the packs of coyotes.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that it has forced the red fox to do is move closer into us. So we now get to see, if we're super lucky, red fox pups, frolicking around on maybe your backyard, and happy as the day if you get to see that. In my view anyway, they are not a threat to people at all.
They were featured in a picture in the Globe the other morning. They were in, I think it was Pembroke, Mass.
Uh-huh.
And they were around a meeting house.
Oh,
And they
Oh,
were
yes.
frolicking.
that's so
together.
great.
Yeah.
They're the cutest things ever.
Hmm.
So, territory, the coyote territory, the coyotes will defend their territory against other coyotes. But this coyote desperately wants to defend his territory against this bobcat. What we did was we found a roadkill deer. We dragged it into the woods, set up a trail cam, and got these great pictures of this confrontation between a coyote and a bobcat. So who do you think won this particular argument?
Oh.
Yeah. So out in nature, cats, they have this ferocity about them. They are superb hunters, and I've seen a house cat stand off a coyote. They're,
Are you serious?
I am serious.
A house cat standing on?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I'm not sure that all house cats could do that, but I have seen one of them do that. And it was so impressive. It was just, back was arched and just all claws and big meows. And
Was it a big cat?
Yep.
Maybe a
Maybe
Maine Coon.
17, 18 pounds.
Yeah.
So not a real,
Not like a Maine Coon.
yeah.
Who has a Maine Coon? Yeah, you guys do. How much does your cat weigh?
It's over, gonna be close to 20-something.
Yeah, they get bigger cats.
So in terms of territory, your own dogs certainly understand the territory that they're defending on your behalf. So you can see a coyote here that thinks he's gonna come into this territory, and the dog has a completely different view. Right?
Wow.
Now, you might be thinking go ahead.
Okay, is that a pit bull?
No,
No.
Like a
it's
retriever.
yeah, it's like a lab cross.
It's a,
Oh.
like a part lab?
Yeah, I would say.
He's
lab.
taking care of business.
Oh, but now, listen, what's more ferocious than this dog is a chihuahua.
Yeah, they are tough.
Oh my
Yeah.
God
Yeah.
in heaven.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
any dog is gonna be territorial, so.
Is that for real or is that Photoshop?
No, that is Photoshop. It is Photoshop.
It's good though.
Now, I'm so glad to hear you laughing, because I have shown this, of course, to an audience a couple of years ago, and dead quiet. They were terrified that coyotes. So it's really good to hear you laugh.
Doctor right
I like the look on his face.
Yeah, it's just a happy coyote, right? Wild Bill. So my experience with wild dogs did begin, it seems quite a long time ago now, with wolves. And when I came back east, I'm from the east, I'm from New Jersey. I'll admit it, okay, I'm from New Jersey. And
Sorry.
I've been, anybody from New Jersey?
We still have mother was born in Newark.
Oh, boy, okay. So, and so when we moved up to New Hampshire, I had been already given a border collie by someone who called himself my friend. Friends don't get friends, border collies. Because if you get a border collie, then you have to make sure it's entertained.
Yep.
So then you get sheep. And once you have sheep, you're suddenly a farmer. And that was nothing I thought I'd ever be. So we moved to New Hampshire so that I could get more sheep and have a bigger farm. But I had become aware of the eastern coyotes out here, and I was intrigued. So we bought a farm in Kensington that had a ton of coyote problems, a ton of them. And I wanted that farm because I knew that the coyotes whose territory we were living in, I knew they were sheep killers, and I wondered if I could re-educate them. They are a dog, after all, and they're extremely smart, and I thought this would be a really interesting experiment to run. So the guy that had the farm before me, there was no barn and the fences were bad, and there were a lot of reasons why his sheep kept getting nailed. But so we built a barn with a little corral there. Here's the barn, here's the corral. We put the kennel right behind the barn, and we had just stock fence, 4-foot stock fence, no electric. There was nothing lethal, so every night, I had about 20 sheep. Every night we would bring the sheep in, no matter how beautiful the night was. When the ewes were about to drop their lambs, they would do that up in the barn so that they were protected. And then every night, my husband and I would take the dogs for a walk around the property. Why?
Hey, mark your territory.
They were marking their territory, right? Just like all dogs do. So, 4 dogs. This was the gift border collie. It was actually a great herding dog, and the only intact dog. The rest of these guys had been neutered. My husband at the time was intact as well. And so, you know, as we went around the property, we all marked. P rules. Now, in a town like Groveland, I think it probably wouldn't be appropriate for you to be marking your backyard that way. But if any of you have coyote problems, all you have to do is call me, and I come down for free. So, and so the first spring that we were there, I knew that the coyotes were hunting to feed their pups, and I did a lot of hazing of them. When I would see the coyotes on the outside of the pasture, I would run at them. I had an air horn, so I threw rocks. I didn't mean, I don't mean to hurt them, but I wanted them to understand that this territory that was delineated here is now off bounds to them. And so I hazed vigorously. And in the winter, we saw their tracks come right up to the fence, and they peed right where my dogs had peed. And then they turned around and walked away. And that's what the farm actually looks like. And some of the animals that we saw around the outside of the farm, this little guy, maybe 38 pounds. It's a very slight coyote, but I want you to notice the placement of its ears, and I want you to notice the shape of its muzzle. Most coyotes have an extremely short, pointed, a pointed muzzle, right? It's narrow and pointed, but look how square his is, and the color of his coat. So that square muzzle and the color of his coat, maybe wolf-like characteristics. Now watch this. Same pack, 3 years later. Same pack. So placement of the ears, extremely different. This animal has a very narrow coyote-like muzzle, much more red coat than the other guy. So with all of this genetic inheritance that these guys have, they're gonna look really different one from the other. In terms of their life cycle, they only mate January to March. So wouldn't it be amazing if we had this adaptation? Think how fewer people there would be. But one of the most interesting things about the January to March thing is that January to March is when the males have the most viable sperm, which I think is a really cool adaptation. I just wonder, you know, how great that would be. And then also the female, her estrus, the only estrus period that she has is 1 week long.
Wow.
Over the whole year.
Wow.
And so as a result of that, what we know about populations that are not hunted, and I'm speaking here about the Yellowstone population, 2/3 of the females never breed.
Wow.
And the reason they never breed is because their estrus period is so brief that it's unlikely that they're gonna find a mate during that very brief period of time. So January to March is mating. Then if the pair is a mated pair, she'll clean out her den. If it's a brand new mated pair and they can establish a territory somewhere, she'll select a den site and excavate and then give birth. We are right now at the very end of the den season. And so there have been pups in the den for the last 4 to 6 weeks anyway. It is during this period right now, when the pups are still in the den, that there can be conflict between coyotes and humans. And the reason is defense of the den. So if a new pack, if a new pair has just gotten into a territory that doesn't seem to be claimed, that territory could be 10 feet behind an elementary school. It could be 10 feet away from a trail that you love, that you've been walking on for, a bajillion years. And suddenly you're walking on the trail and this coyote comes charging out of the shrubbery, snarling at you. It's terrifying, right? So this happened to a friend of mine, and she had her dog with her, and the dog just cowered, which was a very smart thing for the dog to do. And she, who knew a great deal about coyote ecology, realized that this is the time that there might be a den somewhere, and that undoubtedly she and her dog had gotten too near that den. So what she did wisely was kept her face toward the coyote, kept her voice low, made low, comforting sounds, backed off, and she said that as she was about 1/4 of a mile up that trail, she said the coyote followed her and her dog all the way down to the trailhead. And once they were in the parking lot, the coyote trotted back off into the woods. So coyotes have no desire to eat us. We're not on their menu. They have really no interest in the comings and goings of our life. However, when there are pups in the den and we come unknowingly too close, there's going to be a moment there. And I hope that this doesn't happen to any of you. But if it does happen, you say to yourself, oh my gosh, there must be a den nearby, I'm not going to die. That's what I want you to say to yourself. And then you back off. Why do you never run away from a predator? Chase, right. So the rules of the pack are that there's only one breeding pair, and if the yearlings, if these animals are a year of age, that would be very young for coyotes to breed, but with the right disperser from another pack, that disperser might convince one of these, say, females to breed with him. Interestingly, up in Ontario a couple of years ago, researchers found a pack, a territory where not only mom had bred, but one of her daughters had bred, and dug a den on territory and given birth to a litter of pups. And that female came in and killed every single pup.
Oh,
Now, I know, nature is so tough, right? Why was it critically important for her to do that?
Food supply.
Say it again?
Food supply.
Food supply, exactly. If she allowed her daughter's pups to live, there wouldn't be enough for the pack. And so, you know, mom is, she lays down the rules and, you know, you obey or, yeah. So, yeah, so mom and dad, last year's pups, only 3 of them survived to their first birthday, and then this is this year's pups. High mortality rate, which is common out there in the world, it is common. Coyotes can die from, they can get everything that our dogs can get, and the worst thing, of course, that can happen to them is, you know, porcupines.
Oh.
And so, you know, imagine that. So that's a terrible death for a coyote. But at any rate, so questions on this? So a pack is a family unit. Okay. This is a family unit. So last year in Portsmouth, I got to watch this family feeding in this field behind a horse farm, and they frequently would come right up to the barn. They would kill rats around the barn. They were really useful to this horse owner. And this is a shot taken by a woman at Fish and Game. Note that the picture was taken sort of mid-June or so, and she's down to 2 pups already. So this was taken up in Waterville Valley. And near Waterville Valley on Interstate 93, you frequently see dead coyote pups on the side of the road. So both wolf and coyote become sexually mature at 1 to 2 years. 2 years of age is primo. If the pack has been heavily hunted, the males will become sexually mature at the age of 1. So if one of the yearlings wants to breed, they then become what's known as a disperser, and they may have to travel hundreds of miles to find a territory or a mate. And when they do, if it's January to March, there's love in the air. And then 63 days later, the pups are born. The pups are about that big. They weigh about 1 pound. They're very vulnerable to things like weasels, vulnerable to people's dogs, that kind of thing, to fisher. And by the time they're 7 weeks old or so, they're super cute. They make terrible pets. Notice that I don't have a coyote with me. And you know, when the adults are hunting to feed those pups, they bring home partially digested food, and the pups intuitively know to pull at the lips of the adult. And the reason for that is what? What is the adult going to do? Yeah, regurgitate, right? So doesn't she look like she's just about to gag? So if any of you have dogs, when you go home tonight, I know my dog will jump up and lick me in the face. Of course, what he expects is the dinner. So now you know what's expected. This is a pretty cool study from Rhode Island. Numi Mitchell's study down in Rhode Island. She worked with a trapper, and they trapped the breeding male and female in the pack, and they put GPS collars on them so that they could watch every single movement that mom and dad made during the feeding season. And you can see that they stay on territory. So that territory has all the food that they need in it. When, of course, something happens within that territory to reduce the food amount that's available to them, that's when there are ill feelings, shall we say, between one pack of coyotes and another. And so a lot of different misbehaviors occur. This area of Rhode Island is very kind of suburban with little tiny remnants of little tiny farmsteads scattered here and there. So these coyotes are making themselves very much at home in, and there's tons of deer, of course. So what do coyotes eat? As you'll see here, they have a very varied diet. So anything that's available, fruit and vegetables. In August, when all the crops are in, 80% of their diet is fruit and vegetables. So they'll eat anything. So fawn in the spring make up 30% of the coyote's diet. Oh. It's a predator. They can't help it. You know? So here's what I just didn't say. I didn't say that coyotes take 30% of the fawn. I didn't say that. I said fawn make up 30% of their diet. What kills more fawn than coyotes? Bear.
Oh.
Black bear. And what takes more fawn than black bear? You're not going to like this. Tractors.
Really?
Yes. So
Trappers?
tractors.
Tractors.
Farm haying equipment. So when a doe gives birth to her young, the fawns are born with no smell. They can smell, but their bodies don't have smell. So they settle down in the grass. They become very invisible. Farmers on their tractors cannot see that there's a fawn there. And so we are trying to encourage people that hay to hold off on that first hay until the end of June. And then that way, most of the fawn are up and gone, and those nesting birds that rely on the pasture, they have fledged as well. And I think it's a simple way to coexist. Coyotes eat bugs and weasels and woodchuck and fish and catfish. You're such a nice audience to that, cranberries and aluminum foil. Now, how do I know all this? Because over the last 27 years, I collect scat, and I take scat apart and figure out what coyotes have been eating. So, aluminum foil. So 60% of their diet is rodents. Will they take a house cat? Yes, if they can, but most cats can climb up trees. So the animal that can climb up the tree after them is a fisher, right? So fisher are much better hunters of cats.
What about small dogs?
Well, small dogs normally can't climb up a tree.
No, I mean, as far as
prey for them.
Oh,
Coyotes going for small dogs.
you mean the dog killing the cat?
No.
Coyotes killing the dog.
Oh, yes, coyotes can kill
Chihuahuas.
small dogs. Yes, and that's a little bit later in the talk, but now that we're there, absolutely, if you've got a small dog, it is totally up to you to make sure that, and I'm a believer in fences. I have always fenced like crazy, because that's something physical that coyotes can recognize. And if I had a small dog, especially now when they are feeding those pups, most of those pups are off mom's milk now and learning what their natural prey is. And we don't want them to understand that their natural prey is a dachshund.
Right.
We don't want that. So at night, people have to walk their dogs on a leash. Just be a good, responsible steward of your animal.
What is that animal on the left of the cat? Is that a
This thing here, that's a woodchuck. That's a woodchuck. Yeah.
Do you have a picture of that fish?
I don't. I don't.
You look like a weasel.
Yeah.
They are a weasel.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Nasty.
Oh, no, no, no. Oh, no, see, they can't help what they do either.
I
So,
read they killed just for killing, but they don't even.
oh, no, that's not true either. No, fish are great, useful animals. They are the only predator that can take porcupines. And porcupines are my dog, that is my fear right now.
When they take cats.
That's
Fish-
the
they
second
do
time
take
you said
cats.
porcupines. Was the quills get in their mouth and stuff? Is that,
Yes,
that's what, so they can't eat their face?
yes, yes, just horrible. I found sneaker in their scat and banana peels.
Okay.
So you can see that they're an omnivore, right? But check this out. This is not photoshopped, right? So the man that sent me these pictures is from Indiana. This is January in Indiana, and he said that before this breeding pair of coyotes showed up, white-tailed deer came along and got on their hind legs and browsed as high as they could browse in the apple tree, and then the coyotes came in, and because of the architecture of an apple tree, I don't know about you, but that's the first tree I ever learned to climb, because their branches are low and convenient. So, you know, they just make themselves at home eating these gross apples. And it's useful, you know, people see a coyote in an apple tree, the first thing they think is rabbit. It's gotta be a rabbit animal. It's perfectly natural behavior for an opportunistic little guy. These are not photoshopped in. So this coyote became really famous. This picture was taken in 2003 in Seattle. And this little, I think it's a female, would hop on the train at the same stop a couple of times a week and get off the train at the same stop. She totally knew what she was doing. If you want to watch her in action, if you can remember this, you can go onto YouTube and type in Modest Mouse, which is a musical group, who wrote a song called Coyotes, which is an adorable song. And I should have that, you know, that would be such a kick to show you. YouTube, so you go to YouTube, Modest Mouse Coyote Train, and you'll see a video a couple of minutes long that shows her getting on a car and making herself at home, and then the train stops and she hops off.
And there's people on that car? And
Oh no, you can see she'll clear out. And then,
It's a smart coyote.
yeah, and then this guy became famous on NBC News a 3 years ago. He went into a Quiznos in Chicago on one of those really hot days and sidled right up to the cold drinks section. And look at that face, I mean, it's just, you know. So,
Did you get any?
no, the store owner got a broom and whisked him out, you know, no sympathy in Chicago. Chicago has 3,000 coyotes living in it. 3,000. So I'm going to demonstrate for you responsive reproduction. Not really, don't get excited. I want you to understand how this works. The biology of it is so simple. So, you know, how do you kill coyotes and their population grows? This is how. Imagine that we are a pack of coyotes. Now, the standard pack has 5 to 7 animals in it because the mortality on the pups is very high, and, you know, the hunting of coyotes destabilizes it. And so we're going to imagine that we are a pack of coyotes, that this room is our territory, and that out there in the world is a crazy person who hates coyotes and has come in and killed as many coyotes as he could find. So what we're going to do is we're going to eliminate half the pack. I'm sorry.
It's all girls.
So that, no, there are some females. There's some great females. So, all right, so the crazy guy has eliminated half the pack. That leaves half the pack on territory. How do we, I put myself over here, how do we benefit from them being gone?
More food.
More food, exactly. How do female mammals benefit from enhanced nutrition?
Bigger.
Milk cow
More eggs,
Oh.
right? More
Yeah,
eggs. No, coyotes don't lay eggs. I don't want to mislead you. But they, you know, they have, their fertility is enhanced, right? So the females here, our fertility is going to be enhanced, and our chances of having a large litter because of all that fertility is way higher. And we know down on the Cape where coyotes are absolutely hammered, they're just unmercifully killed down there, that because of all of that disruption into packs, that females are giving birth to 10 and 12 pups. Right? It's bad. But anyway, I want you to watch the thread of this. So half the pack is gone, the rest of the pack benefits from those guys not being there. The females are heavily burdened with eggs. And let's imagine though that mom and dad are still on territory. So let's you and I be mom and dad, all right? So you and I are still here. So because we're still here, who gets to breed? Mom and dad. That's it. It's you and me, babe. Okay? I bet you never thought that you were.
We're gonna hear about this for quite some time. Some of the people in this room.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
All in good fun.
Yes. So the only ones to breed are gonna be you and I. So even though the females back there are just ready to go, and the only option you have is to leave the territory and see if you can find a mate. If you can find a mate, your pack, your litter that you will have will be a large litter, and those pups will be born most likely healthier than pups that were in a standard pack where food is always at kind of a premium, right? So putting more coyotes into the world. But let's imagine now that the guy that hunted half of the pack also wanted a trophy animal, and boy, are you one. Okay? So unfortunately, that means, sorry.
Goodbye.
All right, now, I don't have a mate. What's gonna happen to me come January?
No breeding.
I'm not gonna breed with my own kids. I don't do that, all right?
You're either gonna leave the territory.
I'm gonna leave. I am forced to leave in order to find a mate. Once I leave, oh boy! So all we need is one disperser, one male disperser, and there's a ton of them out there. Most of the dispersers among coyotes are males. Females are more likely to stay on territory, and males are more likely to go out in the world seeking. Does this sound familiar at all? And so all we need is one male disperser coming in, and because there's no social hierarchy anymore, mom and dad are gone, and the young are freed up to breed, that disperser could easily breed every female on territory. And you guys would dig dens and give birth to litters of pups. And those litters are gonna be big. So what's the problem now?
Not
Not enough food. Not enough food and overpopulation. Now, those coyotes are desperate to feed their young. Those coyotes are most likely to become nuisances in that environment. Those animals are going to seek out chickens. They're going to go after geese. They're going to go after small dogs. Whereas if the pack had remained stable, with mom and dad being the only ones to breed and everything else being equal, those animals would still continue to hunt their natural prey, and the population, of course, would be much lower. So do you understand that?
Yeah.
So that responsive breeding, what did I do with my, So more females breed, maybe at a younger age, producing larger litters. So that eastern coyote that I showed you at the beginning of the program that looked pretty wolfy, that animal came from Cape Cod, and he was one of a litter of 12 pups. So they took 5 of the pups and brought them to the Stone Zoo and then drowned the others. And that's what happens out there. That's what happens.
Are they protected then, or are they protected?
Pardon me?
Why aren't they protected, or are they protected?
They're not protected at all. As you can see here, it is our native dog. It is like the dingo is to Australia, you know, the jackal is to India, the coyote is to America. But look at how many get killed each year, and that's an old statistic. The number, I'm sure, is 100,000 or higher now. Most states allow year-round unlimited killing.
Does
Which-
Massachusetts, do we?
Massachusetts does not allow that.
Because they want to do it in Wilton.
They want to kill
They want to kill
coyotes.
the coyote.
And why do they want to kill the
I don't know,
coyotes?
you should come to the selectmen.
Well, I will. Let me know about it.
He talked about you, I think, one of them that was against it, and said there was a woman that knows it all, and he mentioned that about killing the coyote, how it produces more.
Are any of the people here?
I don't know if any of the selectmen
Yeah.
So
I know who they
are
are.
coyotes a
I was
nuisance?
looking
Are
at my
they,
pitchfork.
have they killed dogs or have they?
Well, they want to let their dogs out. They don't want to have to take care of their dogs.
Okay, so there you go. So, you know, when I was young, though there were no real predators in the woods. And now we have a whole different scenario. These are not like our grandmother's woods anymore. And it's not our grandmother's ecosystem. We've got coyotes that will not go away. They will only persist and make more of themselves. So killing is exactly what can't happen if you want to reduce the population of coyotes in Groveland. And I'd be happy to come to a selectmen's meeting. Just invite me.
Well, they mentioned that there was a woman that spoke about it, so you may have been.
I am
I'm
the
sure you
woman.
were.
Yeah. So, anyway, up in New Hampshire, not only can coyotes be killed day after day after day, and there's no limit, and you don't have to report what you kill, but you can kill them at night during their breeding season. And we also have coyote killing contests in Vermont and New Hampshire, where people go out mid-winter and kill as many as they can get. It's crazy.
Are they trying to pass a law for protection?
We are pushing. Coyotes don't need protection per se.
From hunting?
It's just, it makes no, if the hunters care about getting a deer, then hunters want fewer coyotes on the landscape. And it's a hard sell. It's a hard sell to make people believe that by not killing them, the population will stabilize at a lower level. So, anyway, this guy is trying to wallpaper his barn with coyote pelts. Yeah. And you know, I'm sure, like many people that I've talked to, he truly believes that he is saving deer. But of course, he's enhancing the problem. So, coy dogs, I'll just say very briefly, there are no coy dogs out there.
No.
There are no coy dogs out
Coy
there.
dogs.
What is it?
Yeah, so a coy dog is what we have traditionally referred to the coyote as. They call them coy dogs. Maybe because I'm in civilization here in Groveland, they don't call them coy dogs here. But up in the hills where I'm from, can a dog and a coyote breed? Yes. all members of the dog family can interbreed and they can produce puppies. And in this instance, this lab bred that female coyote. And the guy that owned that lab took a series of 12 photographs showing his dog breeding the coyote. Yay! And so then what happened? What happened after that is the dog goes home to his kibble and bits, thinking, what a great day, really. And 63 days later, the coyote digs a den and gives birth to a litter of coy dogs. But I said that there's no coy dogs out there. The problem for her is that she doesn't have a mate. If this cur had been an ethical coyote,
Yeah, sure.
you would have done the right thing by her. But no, it's a dog. And so she's given birth to a litter of coy dog pups. She's the only provider. And so every time she leaves that den, those pups are vulnerable to whatever. But let's say that one of her pups survives. What we know about those coy dogs that, is that instead of coming into a breeding condition January to March, they come into breeding condition earlier, November or so. And so the only animal that they can breed with is another dog. And so the coy dog, that term coy dog as a continual population that can continue to be a population of coy and dog can't exist. Okay? This is a coy dog. That again, somebody calling himself my friend gave me this thing. So a Siberian Husky crossed with a coyote. And he got this dog from a guy in Minnesota who had a very slow sled dog team and trapped a coyote and bred the coyote with his leader to thinking that because coyotes can run 35 miles an hour, that all that speed was going to get into his sled dog team. But these are psychotic animals. And when he tried to put harnesses on these coy dog crosses, so he was going to eliminate all of the dogs. But Charlie thought that I would love to have a coy dog.
So a dog and a coyote could be friends then?
Oh, a dog and a coyote could breed.
And they could get along like if they met?
They could. And coyotes and dogs frequently play with one another in fields and that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, it's a dog.
Then how come they eat the small dogs?
Well, because small dogs look like they need to be eaten. I'm a dog lover.
Well, I know somebody that let their dog out, well, not too long ago either. And it was midnight, and the dog, there was a coyote in the distance, and the dog just ran right to the coyote, and the coyote picked him up and took him.
And they never saw the dog
And
again?
they found the carcass later, I guess, but
Oh.
What kind of dog?
it was like a little Shih Tzu and mix. It
Yeah.
was,
Oh, no match.
It was on Rollins Street in Groveland.
That's so
They're all
sad.
behind.
Those
on
stories are
Rollins
so
Street.
sad.
Yeah, Rollins Street, there's all kinds of dens down behind where the fields are there.
There are all sorts of what?
Dens, so you can hear them, the pups and everything.
Well, remember that there can only be one den, because there's only one female that's breeding.
Uh-huh.
But understand too, that every single person in this room lives within the territory of a pack of coyotes. All of us do.
The
They're
sounds
everywhere
at
out
night,
there.
you can- the sounds
So
at
let's talk
night.
about their howling. Let's talk about that.
Oh, wow.
So, why do coyotes howl? Anybody have any ideas?
I heard it was when they get something to eat.
No? So that's a myth.
To scare off.
So it's a
Like
myth
it's
that
a
has
fashion.
anything to do with hunting. So they do not howl when they're about to hunt. They are really quiet when they're about to hunt. And they don't howl after they have hunted because they don't want to alert anybody else. So it's all, it has nothing to do with All right, so we've eliminated that, so that's very good.
It's kinda like, why do we sing?
Oh my God, that's great.
Yeah.
It's for the joy of it. I mean, these are
Yeah.
happy animals. So, I have a camp about as far north in New Hampshire as you can have a camp. And I do my coyote research work up there. And and I have trail camps all over the place. And there has been a coyote, a pup from last year that loves to come and sit right where my trail cam is and just throw her head back and just howl away. And so, because they are highly social animals, they're communicating with one another in terms of locating one another. So you'll frequently hear one coyote howl answered by either another or the rest of the pack. Sometimes, if you are really lucky, you can hear an entire pack howl answered by another pack. And what that is territorial defense. So the one pack, which is probably 5 animals, it sounds easily like 10, right? Because they can do that. They can throw their voices. The one pack is saying, listen to how mighty we sound. And the other pack is going to do exactly the same thing. So they'll yodel back and forth to one another. And then when they've had enough of it, it's like somebody has pulled the plug,
Except
right?
the 8 dogs in the neighborhood are now all barking.
I know. I think it's hilarious. And of my border collies, I've got one border collie husky cross. He's really big. And as soon as the coyotes begin howling, he dives between my legs. Such a wimp. So, at any rate, so when you hear them howling, try to enjoy it. Coyotes are a smaller animal than a wolf, and their vocal cords are shorter, so their voices are higher. So they would like to howl better, but they can't. Pardon me?
Why would it be in the night, like it's usually 1 a.m. or something like that?
Oh, well, because things are quiet at night, you're hearing them, but they howl by day as well. It's completely natural for them to be out and about during the day, and you'll notice, if you've seen them at all, that they're out and about just alone.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that 60% of their diet is what?
Fruit and vegetables.
No, no.
Oh, 60% of fun.
60% is rodents, little stuff. And so there's no need to have a bunch with you, right?
This one walks up the street, he's not even in the grassy parts, when he doesn't look left or right, he knows.
Yeah, he's not interested in people.
He knows where he's going.
That's right, right.
It was on Facebook, yesterday or whatever, that somebody saw one going up the street and said he's rabid.
Oh.
Yeah, I know that one.
I've seen a red fox walking up King Street, right up the middle of the street,
Yeah.
They
I
eat
mean-
food.
during the day.
With as rapidly as we're building houses and shopping malls and stuff, it leaves these animals very little choice other than
Right.
to walk up streets.
And they're looking for food, aren't they, for the
They're
day?
they're always looking for food.
Uh-huh.
Food, they are successful 1 out of every 13 hunting attempts. So it's hard out there for them to get a meal, which is why they always look thin, and that scares people because they think, oh, that animal's so thin, it could attack anybody. We are not on their menu. Are you doing okay? Can I tell you a story?
Sure.
Okay, and then I'm done. About 20 years ago, before I knew what I know now, I thought it would be a great idea to get one of those varmint calls that sounds like a wounded rabbit, and place a bait out in a field. Like I got some roadkill, piles of, like, I got some dead raccoons and stuff, piled them up in the field. And then I did the varmint call that sounded like a wounded rabbit, and I was off to the side, and I was all dressed in, my boyfriend's camo and stuff. And I was just so smart, and I was gonna take pictures of the coyotes coming into that field to go after that bait. And I waited, and I called, and I waited, and I called. I'm thinking, good Lord, what is keeping them? And I happened to turn my head. And there were 3 right behind me, not 30 feet away. And I'm sure they were thinking, what a jerk. What a rookie. And so I stood up quickly and I watched the 3 of them just vanish across the field and into the woods. And I've had numerous encounters with coyotes where, had they wanted to, they could have attacked and eaten me. And, you know, they're scared of us. And it's important to make them scared of us. And this summer, when the pups are out and about, they're naive to us. They may come walking right up your driveway and stand right as far away as I am from you, looking at you. And your job at that point is to haze them. And you do that by walking rapidly at them, waving your arms and shouting. They will not attack you. Pardon me?
Making them afraid of you.
You've got to make them afraid. And you have to convince them that your yard is your place. And please tell your friends who aren't here tonight, if they have a small dog, now for the next couple of months, now is the critical time when the rest of the pack is hunting to feed those pups. Now is the critical time to keep those dogs on a leash and take good care of them.
Sure.
Right?
And your cats.
And what?
And your cats.
And I keep your cat inside. If I had a cat, do you know what the biggest
never
predator
had a
of
cat.
cats is? It's not Fisher, it's great horned owls.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
And that is a death I would never want for a cat. So keep things warm, coexist. So
What's their lifespan?
their lifespan in the wild is about 4 years. At the Long Lake Science Center, they have a coyote there. It just died. It was 17 years old. And they just got a new coyote. Beautiful animal. So when they're vaccinated, when they're fed well, all of that, they can live nice long lives. But out in the wild.
That's amazing.
I noticed when you showed what they were eating, there was no skunks there.
Oh, I could have thrown. I've never found skunk in their scat, but I know they eat skunk.
Okay.
And they're now eating beaver, which is very interesting because our beaver are 35 to 40 pounds. That's a lot of animal for a coyote to deal with. So, are there any questions that you have that I didn't get to?
What was that website again? Because people are gonna.
Oh, it's just YouTube. You just go to YouTube and you put in the search bar
I think it's Canadian.
Modest Mouse Coyote Training. What was that?
I was trying to remember.
Yes, Modest Mouse. So,
Is there any chance I not get taken as a trophy and you and I can get together?
On that note.
well, my husband. So, otherwise, you're a trophy. So, okay, well, thank you very much for being here. Good audience.